So we got the garage kind of organized. We got the jig in the building. We didn't tape any of that because it was pretty much just two guys with bad backs trying to monkey a big awkward piece of metal into a shop. But it's in. It's on jack stands right now. So this is kind of the height we're going to work on it at. We get on these jack stands here. So what we're going to do now is level it out. And then we'll probably tack the jack stands to the jig. That way nothing moves. And my father's over there fixing the welder right now because the welder flipped over and cracked a couple of pieces inside. So we're going to fix the welder, level the jig out, and then we're going to have to add these tabs here to the sides of the jig, just in a couple spots. Just add them on here to support the car, because the plan is to take the body and set it on the jig square on the drip rails, on the pinch welds. And the pinch welds are exactly 56 inches wide from side to side. And the jig is exactly 56 inches from outside to outside. So just to make life a little bit easier when we're trying to square the body on there, we're just going to add 4 tabs, 2 on each side. And that will hopefully relieve a little bit of aggravation while we're trying to get the body squared up. So here's the wire feed mechanism in the welder. And right here, you can see it cracked. So we have a spare mechanism, luckily. I don't even know where it came from. Actually, I think my friend Brian gave it to us. Under there, yeah. Right there. So we have the whole spare feed mechanism. This is actually a Harbor Freight welder. Well, yeah, Astro Power. I think Harbor Freight sells them, but we've had this thing for probably, God, 10 years, 15 years. And it's still going strong. If it didn't flip over, we'd be using it right now. Get the welder back up and running, and we're just adding the tabs now to the jig. And what we did is, this bar right here is typically where the cross member falls, the front cross member, when you're putting the chassis on here. So I actually had the opportunity to measure off a assembled Malibu today, and measured from the front of the rocker panel to the center of the front hub, and it was like 23.5 inches. So what we're going to do is, that's the center of what's going to be the cross member. This is about 23.5 inches, and we'll weld a bracket here, and we'll weld one more back there, the length of the rocker panel of the car, and that way we just have a little bit of extra support when we're getting the body squared and not trying to, you know, like I said, it's exactly 56 inches wide, and it's the same width as this jig, so it'd be kind of a cluster trying to get that thing squared up. So this should help us out. So we're going to weld these on, grind them flush, and then level the jig out. So that's all we need to do there. Just a couple of small beads. Like I said, this isn't going to hold a whole lot of weight. This is just going to help us support the body a little bit in while we get it squared up. And ultimately the body's going to rest right on the lip of the jig, and we're going to tack it down anyways. So we'll grind that flush and then do the same on the other 4 spots. We got our 4 little tabs welded on. Now we're just going to level the jig out. And then once it's leveled, we're just going to level it with just shims like this. We'll just shim it between the jack stand and the jig. And then once it's leveled out, we're going to go in and tack the jig to the stand, and probably just put a tack right there just so that there's no wiggle here that can affect it, because we want to make sure this thing's as level as possible. If we look at it right now, it's actually really pretty close. We should have come up a little bit on the right hand side, so we'll level it left to right first on both ends, and then we'll level it front to rear. So we got the jig all leveled out, and this is why we're going to weld it, you know, jack stands to the jig, is because, you know, most garages slope to the rear for water drainage. So, you know, we had to shim it up pretty high on the back, and we just don't want anything to move while we're building the car, because you want every rail to be perfectly level. And you weld half the car, or you build half the car with the jig one way and half the car with the jig the other way, you'll have pretty big problems. So we'll just get everything welded up and solid, and then we'll be ready to bring the car down and slide it on. So that's that. It's all leveled out, all tacked down, so it shouldn't move while we're working on it. I would definitely advise against welding on your jack stands, but that's all right. Other than that, it's looking good. Everything's level. So that's about it for tonight. I think next week we'll drag the body down. I think we're gonna have to cut the floor out of it before we put the body on the frame. Because I believe the rear, like the passenger footwell area, hangs lower than the rocker panels. So I think we'll cut the floor out and then slide the body onto the jig, square it, tack it down, and then start looking into cutting the rest of the floor and the firewall out of it. That's it for tonight, guys. I know leveling a jig isn't really the most exciting content, but it's going to be done. It's part of the process. Things are really going to start ramping up once we get the body on the jig, start cutting things up, start laying some tube. It's going to get real exciting. But I definitely appreciate you guys watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. It definitely helps. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.